Happy Halloween, everyone! And basically, I knew this because I was looking at Facebook and basically saw a caption where they were asking vampires or zombies, and when you actually look at the true origin of the modern zombie, uh, it goes back to one book, and that book is I Am Legend. And in I Am Legend, in the original book, the creatures are not considered zombies, but are considered vampires, um, because they have all the symptoms of a vampire. And and so from there, George A. Romero. Well, it's not a direct adaptation. George A. Romero was influenced by that story when he made Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead. And I'm going to talk about the evolution of the ideas behind I Am Legend and um, and the evolution of what we call the modern zombie in the various offshoots uh, that have come out of it. So basically, the we're going to start off with the original book I Am Legend, um, which was written in 1954 uh, by by Richard Matheson. And according to Wikipedia, its influential development of the zombie genre and the population of worldwide apocalypse due to disease, and and it would be later adopted uh, for Last Man on Earth in 1964 and The Omega Man 1971 and I Am Legend 2007 and was um, and there's also a direct-to-video production thing called it goes I'm Omega, and it's the inspiration in the state that it is the inspiration for uh, Night of the Living Dead 1968. So basically, uh, Robert Nimble is apparently the only sole survivor in the city of Los Angeles as as the implied pandemic was caused by war and was spread by dust and and exposed to the mosquito population. So basically, uh, he's going house. Uh, he's not in this version. He's not a doctor, and but he is trying to searching for a possible cure uh, due to the fact that he is immune to everything, and in flashbacks reveal that the disease claimed his uh, wife and daughter, and he was forced to kill them after seeing them rising from the dead and as vampires and attacking him. So he barricades himself uh, by sunset in his house, uh, and he protects himself with all the basic arts with garlic and mirrors and stuff. And his neighbor Ben Coleman is basically his protagonist, and so he basically during the day he scrounges around looking for supplies. He drives stakes to the hearts of neighbors. He's going from house to house to house trying to eliminate as many of them as he can. And so he um, So basically, um, he tries to he tries to deal with the problem, and he tries to figure out the disease, but ultimately it proves uh, eventually he does uh, run into a woman named Ruth. He tries to he's suspicious of her, and the thing is that the vampires are not are um, they don't come out during the day. He's able to move around at night, and Ruth was sent in to spy on him, but he uh, is um, eventually he soon discovers that he is the uh, ultimately he comes down to the realization that he is that that a new society has been formed, and that he no longer has a place for uh, he no longer has a place for it, but that the people who view him that he is that among the vampires he is um, a is uh, basically says, I am the new I am the new superstition entering on Salem's fortress forever. I am legend. Basically, he is the monster in the night rather than them, and it's the first. Um, it's the first. Probably not the first one, but it's probably the first widely book that turns the tables on the idea of who's the monster and who's the man. Um, on that, and I read it as a graphic novel, and the first adaptation of this film was Last Man on Earth, and it starred Vincent Price, and he starred as uh, it's an Italian film by Italian director who's stars as Dr. Robert Morgan rather than Neville, and he and so basically it's the original art wrote the original screenplay for the adaptation, but later rewrites uh, but due to later rewrites, he didn't want his name attached to the credits, uh, and because of this, he went under the name Logan Swanson. Uh, uh, so basically, it's the same basic premise, but in the end, he declares himself the last man on Earth. That he is unable to adapt to the new society that is in have been that has existed. And in 1968, we end up with Night of the Living Dead, which is not an adaptation, but actually but was inspired by it. And so basically, it came out in 1968. It's an independent horror film directed by George Romero. Um, and the basic premise is that uh, a girl named Barbara is with her brother to and his brother Johnny basically uh, visit their father's grave. Barbara Johnny teases um, Barbara because he knows that he's afraid of he's uncomfortable with the concept of death. A lot of people are, and thus comes a famous line: "They're coming to get you, Barbara." And just being, he's just being a jackass when a strange man attacks him, and it's an actor named Bill Hazeman who was the original, who was uh, uh, who actually came out in a few other movies, and I'm not too sure if he's still alive or not, but he was still making movies, uh, and even had a let's see if he's still alive. But he did make he does uh, he did make appearances stating that he was the first zombie in Night of the Living Dead. Um, he died February 2012. He died last year, and he also came out in movies called Night of Legion, Santa Claus, 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 New Ambition, and The Drunken Dead Guy. The final rule was River of Darkness, where he played the lead along with Kirk Allen and Asnin. He later directed Marionette and Flesh Eaters. Oh, and he also appeared in it. And apparently he died of cancer. So basically, uh, after Johnny is killed falling on a gravestone, Barbara flees and ends up at a farmhouse where she discovers a woman whose mangled corpse runs at that house and ends up running into Ben, who is um, the first black hero in, in any film, and probably the only black man who the first black lead in any movie, um, and so he basically Ben begins to try to take charge of the situation. Uh, uh, when he starts barricading the doors and windows trying to create a safe place, when he ends up discovering and he runs into Harry and Helen Cooper, who are a couple uh, whose car got attacked by a group of zombies, and their daughter is in the basement, slowly dying of being bitten by the zombies. Uh, Soon, they start to discover TV, and they start uh, receiving emergency broadcasts of a series of brutal murders, and soon a conflict uh, arises um, as as Harry demands everyone goes down to the cellar, but then uh, sees it as a death trap, and that uh, he runs into another couple, and Tom, and so they start um, as they're trying to keep the zombies out of the house as more and more come in. They listen to both radio reports and television reports of the collecting television reports with conflicting ideas of where the infection came from, and that the most common um, and one of the scientists suggests that it's radiation from a probe that came from Venus that was collecting from the which was deliberately exploded in the Earth's atmosphere when radiation was detected on the satellite. So that's one theory that, um, but there's never a single theory uh, that makes that is ever that the filmmakers ever state is the reason that what the satellite is, and so they then try to escape, but the truck blows up while um, the truck blows up after Judy and Tom are filling around are trying to get gasoline so that they can get the car filled up while the zombies are attacking, and Ben has to go back into the house. They end up are trying to are trying to keep the zombies out, but Harry and Ben are constantly fighting, and Ben is mortally wounded, um, unknowingly that Karen has awakened and murders her mother, and then walks away. Uh, she doesn't try to eat her. She doesn't bite her, um, but Harry does come back to life. Now, one theory is that the virus only affects people who are the people who are coming back to life are people who are kind of bad to begin with, that their sins are what's keeping them alive, while certain people are not. So they only affect people who are just as messed up as they are. Um, but the zombies overwhelm them, and Ben ends up going heading out in the cellar. Next morning, the sheriff, along with a bunch of hunters, are hunting down zombies, and Ben, uh, walking, getting out of the cellar with his gun, are trying to determine, but because he is so with he looks so haggard that he gets shot, and is taken, his body is taken to be burned in a pile of other zombies as a way of disposing of the zombies, and hopefully preventing uh, further spread. Of course, that doesn't really work, because we end up with uh, Dawn of the Dead. But before we get that, we get to the other adaptation, which is Omega Man. And basically, Omega Man is set in Los Angeles, um, and basically, according to the plot here, this is from also from Wikipedia, that that in March of '75, biological warfare between China and the United States kills most of the people, and Army Colonel Robert Owen D., played by Howard Heston, based in Los Angeles, begins to succumb to the consuming plague, but manages to inject himself with an experimental vaccine, uh, rendering him immune. Meanwhile, basically the plague spread, survivors join together and become a family, creates a cult of nocturnal albino mutants that are seeking to destroy all technology due to science being man's downfall. So 2 years later, Neville is the only survivor. I've never seen this one personally. I'm just reading this off of. I've seen parts of it, but I've never seen the movie altogether. But so Neville just uh, maintains his day uh, by patrolling the deserted city, hunting, destroying members of the cult, nearly, which proves to be nearly impossible to catch. Uh, and So one day he breaks into an apartment store, and he spots a woman who quickly runs away. He chases her into the overgrown park, but then decides uh, that he's seen things and misses it. The next day, he's captured by the family. He's put on a summary trial for treat or heresy uh, by Jonathan, the former um, news anchor, who's now the leader of the family, sentenced to death and buried near stake near he's near burning his stake near Dodger Stadium. He's rescued by Lisa, the woman he dismissed earlier as a hallucination, and a former medical student. Lisa and Dutch are among the few survivors, among children infected with given some resistance from the disease, but are slowly manifest. Nevertheless, they will come to mutation. So basically, in this film, they're referred to as mutants rather than vampires. Um, and so basically, uh, they, they return to the apartment and start to treat Ricky, who is succumbing to disease. Uh, Neville and Lisa becomes attacked as the generator fuel runs out. The family decides to attack, sending Gary to climb in and causing his death and goes. If plans to leave the Rabbit City and leave the survivors to new life and work, then leave the family to die. He successfully creates the serum and administers it to Ricky. Once cured, Ricky reveals the location of the family's headquarters during the disagreement with the family, who are also human, insisting that to them as well. With odds with Neville's first shoots and questions for his men and his followers, and trying to convince him, he refuses to believe him. And then he has a spy as an executed. Dr. Clark, fiddling. Wow, that's a lot of stuff. So basically, Neville dies and Lisa leaves the city forever. Apparently they were shooting this in the morning and limited. Actually, we couldn't do that today. So basically, this is like the third adaptation. So they went from vampires, and then Night of the Living Dead, there were zombies. And originally, the Night of the Living Dead was originally originally Night of the Living Dead was originally titled Night of the Ghouls, and originally they were supposed to be ghouls, but it ended up becoming The Living Dead, and eventually the word zombie got attached to it. And in Omega Man, they're now called mutants, and so we see the change there from what they're being called. And if you look at zombie movies, rarely do you have a zombie movie that says that goes out with the name zombie, because they're trying to make it so that it's a they come up with their own real words for it, because there's not a single unified word for it. Think of Walking Dead, because they were constantly that zombie movies didn't exist in a world where Night of the Living Dead never happened. So then you have in 1970, I think it was 1978 was when the the original Dawn of the Dead came out, and it was just and its Italian title is Zombie. His Italian title became Zombie, and yeah, it was 1978 when the original Dawn of the Dead came out, and basically took the original took that concept and made it into a worldwide epidemic, and so um, it basically follows a pair of reporters and a SWAT team as they try to survive the, the zombie apocalypse as it begins to take over, and as the and so they end up hiding out into a mall that's already infected with zombies, and so they start trying to slowly clear out the zombies in and out of the mall, and it was along with they up the gore and they up the gore and up the violence considerably, but they up the gore and up the violence, and uh, and the commentary was made more overt, as mall shoppers were. Many people tend to view mall shoppers as zombies, anyways. You know, we're just shopping, consumerism, and it's an iconic film. Although it's not really one of my favorites. I tend to like Night of the Living Dead better, mainly just because of the makeup. The zombies are kind of look a little goofy in comparison to what they're scary, but it's to me just more it's just the way the zombies look in that film kind of take me out of it, and it makes it apparent. But there is the remake, and I'll talk about that later. And but it would be distributed to the rest of the world as Zombie with an I, and its international distributor was Lucio Fujii, and he and Romero did not see eye to eye, and did and his version, the European version, was cut out a lot of the humor that was in the original Dawn of the Dead, and made a much more grisly and more gruesome version. So there's like 3 versions of the film. There's the American version, there's the European version, and then there's an extended version. And Fujii would make his own zombie movie called in the U.S. here it's called Zombie, and in the rest of the world it's Zombie 2. And what And the basic premise is that a boat shows up in New York. Shows a boat shows up in New York Harbor, um, and a police and a pair of police officers, uh, while inspecting the boat, are attacked by an unknown assailant, and the assailant falls into the river, um, being shot by his partner. And the daughter of the owner of the boat, uh, who wants to know what happened to her father, ends up going back to the island where the boat was last reported to be, um, and along with the reporter and a few other people, uh, end up on the island and running into a doctor who is trying to find out the cause and in a potential cure for the epidemic of the undead. Basically, zombie. If you compare the makeup in this film compared to the Romero film, it's far more grotesque. Uh, they look like they're actually falling apart. Um, but the story wise is not as good, but it's more gorier, um, and there's a lot more. There are a lot more boobs. There's one part where the lady is going diving topless, and another where a woman is taking a shower um, while zombies are attacking her house. Before one of them grabs her and basically takes a broken piece of wood, uh, grabs her and shoves basically a large splinter into her eye, basically gouging her and killing her. Um, and the end part of the film is basically uh, them escaping the island, but not before the doctor gets bitten, and they end up having the reporter and the reporter and the woman, the daughter of the boat owner, are discussing whether or not to take the doctor back to New York for a medical stay before they they get a radio signal, finally get a radio signal uh, stating that New York City is overrun by zombies uh, and that they're crossing the off onto the Washington Bridge, and this is being said as the by DJ as the zombies are ready to break down as he's broadcasting. Um, and the end scene is basically all the zombies leaving Manhattan Island and into Brooklyn through the George Washington Bridge. Um, I kind of, when I was a little kid, that was kind of, it was a really creepy film. Um, although you can tell that in some scenes that they are wearing masks, but it's especially when they're not wearing clothing, because you can see kind of the difference between the this the complexion on the mask and the complexion of the actor. But considering uh, it is far more grotesque, but the story isn't as strong as Romero's piece. So, um, and for a long time, there wasn't really any real evolution of the zombie for a while, other than for comedy and what's it, how um, Return of the Living Dead, where it was more for comedy, but they ran, they climbed stuff. Um, but nothing seriously happened until 2002 when we have 28 Days Later. And 28 Days Later uh, was influenced by Omega Man, and basically is the story of and the basically the story of 28 Days Later is the story. The story opens up with a group of a group of animal activists who uh, who break into a research into a medical research area and sets free a chimp that attacks them and infects one of them, and then uh, we don't, and then it skips over and becomes infected. Uh, the story uh, expands from um, takes place then 28 days later, where a Mexican courier named Jim, played by Cillian Murphy. You may know him from playing the Scarecrow from the Dark Knight trilogy. Uh, Basically wakes up in the hospital and finds the hospital empty as he is trying to get information and try to find out what's going on. So he ends up uh, uh, going into a church, um, but he soon finds that there are uh, dead bodies, and he finds bodies there, but not all of them dead. The first one is a priest who is infected by the disease, and then some of the and he alerts other that are other infected that are around, and he tries to while he's escaping, he runs into two more survivors, Mark and Selena and Mark, who throw Molotov cocktails onto Jim's pursuers, and then they end up hiding out into the underground, and basically um, um, they begin exchanging stories. Jim explains that he's been comatose after he got hit by a car. Uh, that he's been comatose, and last um, thing that he remembers is that a car coming at him, and so basically Selena and Mark end up explaining to him that the people that they run into are infected, and that there's something in, as they say, something in the blood is um, causing them to act this way, um, and that any exposure, and that any open cut, uh, any opening in the skin will cause the infection, and so basically they after surviving a second attack, which takes Mark's life, um, which occurs inside. Oh yeah, it was your parents' house. Uh, time that it takes for infect the right virus to overcome its victim is like in no more than 30 seconds. And so they end up uh, discovering a light in a flat, and so they end up running into Frank, who's a taxi driver, and his teenage daughter Hannah, and they spend the night there. Uh, they realize that well, come to realize that the virus is it's basically um, they come to realize uh, that there is a there is a message telling them that there is safety further up north, and so they decide to leave the city, collecting supplies, um, and leaving the city, and they end up uh, having to get by um, having to drive over a blockade set up in a tunnel that blocks the city from the rest of the town, from the rest of the country, making them have to make a harrowing escape as the infected run after them, and they end up uh, getting to that location only to discover that there are no they at first don't see any people until um, until Frank ends up running into a dead body and having blood hitting his eye when when a group of soldiers pop out and gun him down. At first they think they're safe, but then they discover that uh, soon discover that 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 the um, that the answer is that they have to sit out and wait for the infected to basically starve to death. Um, uh, but the military basically, uh, but the soldiers have decided among themselves to try to to take the females as sex slaves, and so they decided that um, they need to leave, and so but realizes that the comes to realize that um, the fear comes to realize that it's not a worldwide pandemic. That only Great Britain is quarantined, and uh, when he sees reconnaissance plane overhead, and so they decide. When Jim um, but Jim manages to to escape and rescues um, he manages to escape by taking out two of the soldiers himself, releasing one of the infected soldier and the who was earlier shown, uh, and the thing and um, so they make their escape and go further north into a house close to the border of Scotland. And behind them are groups of uh, and so it's like a few days later, and they're in the house, and they realize that there's a plane coming overhead, and they end up uh, coming out of a barrier that says hello as the plane flies, uh, and so and there are two other endings to this, and one of them is that uh, that they that Jim gets shot and they end up taking him to into a hospital. Um, Ended up taking him to a hospital, and he ended up and it wasn't completed because it didn't fare well because it was just kind of late. And then there was another ending that was storyboarded but never made, and apparently in that ending, and the cure was to completely, transfer the blood out, and they end up the hospital ends up getting overrun by the infected, but Jim, um, but basically Frank, who was infected, Jim gives his blood to save Frank, and they end up leaving the hospital before it gets overrun, and uh, he is he's left there dying in the exact chair that the monkey was that the chimpanzee was in. Um, and either way, it was bleak. Like, the so I much prefer the ending that movie had. Um, and the one thing that people started to notice was that they're called infected, but the thing that made people stand up and look was that they ran down that they were as much of a credible threat as humanity was, that they were um, just um, as brutal. And that leads us to the remake of Night of Dawn of the Dead, and which was made in 2004, and that one takes the basic premise of the story and kind of expands on it with a different group of survivors. and does it with a different group of survivors, um, and basically the whole premise of this uh, story is uh, basically this nurse who is taking the night off. Uh, the last patient she deals with is a person who gets bitten in a bar fight near the river, and that's an important plot point later. Um, but the and so basically she ends her shift, and as she leaves, there's another. Uh, she asks where the patient went to. They said, oh, they put him in ICU. You know, and the thing that caught their attention is why the doctor that was, you know, looking at him were asking for all these weird tests to be done with him because it was just a bite that he had, and so as he leaves, there's another patient covered in blood, tied up, uh, just thrashing around, and he ends up just uh, going past an ambulance, and the ambulance is going past an ambulance, and the ambulance driver is taking a nap, but it looks like a dead guy is sitting there, and it's kind of something foreboding of coming. So she ends up going back to her home in the suburbs. She runs into her neighbor's kid. Says hello, goes to one. They end up watching late night TV and taking a shower together, and then, but in the background, you're hearing reports of rioting, and then uh, the the, emer- the emergency broadcast system is going out, and it, when the next day at dawn they wake up are awakened by the the neighbor's child in their house, and the husband is like fear, um, realizes that there's something wrong, and then he gets bitten, and when and then quickly dies. Uh, the nurse character goes out and throws her, basically uh, throws the child, closes the door, tries to call 911, tries to do everything she can, and then he dies. But no sooner than, you know, Reese, he comes back to life and then starts to attack her. She escapes through the bathroom window and then is stopped uh, by one is shocked by the sight of the neighborhood going all to hell, like one house is on fire, the other uh, people are being chased by by their neighbors, people, and just havoc. And she gets stopped by this this one guy with a gun who is just uh, who's just ready to shoot anything that moves, and ends up getting hit by an ambulance, and she ends up getting into her car right when her husband finally gets out of the house and tries to kill her by trying, and because he's uh, dead, he can't feel pain, so he's able to punch through the windshield, um, and ends up losing her driving down the street when and when he happens to see another neighbor and he attacks her. Um, the so basically they she drives down the street as havoc begins to go around her, including gas station that blows up after a car crashes into another car, slamming into the gas station. Boom. And she's getting from all over the news that that emergency shelters are being overrun, and um, military the military is trying to get hold on things, but no one's in charge. He ends up running into a school bus where the passengers are being attacked and eaten, and the school bus driver tries to take control of her car. And she ends up rolling over, and then we get the title sequence, which has Johnny Cash's when the when the man comes around, which is completely appropriate for this scene, because it is really dark. And so she ends up waking up, and Big Rain, who plays the cop, uh, discovers her and checks if he's alive or when infected, and she ends up following him. They run into another group of survivors who tells them, "Hey, don't go that direction because we just came from there. There were 8 of us. There are now 3 of us." And so they end up going to the mall, seeing if they can find shelter there. Parking lot's completely covered in zombies, and they end up having to break in through the back service area, and end up so and end up running into two zombies, a janitor and an infected and a security guard that he was that the janitor was eating. Both are disposed of, but one of the survivors, but a pregnant survivor, gets bit, and so but they end up hiding that, as they haven't figured out yet what is causing this. The pair of security guards who are just kind of who are really out for themselves and are kind of on a bit of power trip, end up letting them stay in there as they watch television, informing them of what is going on, and no one knows. And the terrifying thing is, no one knows what's really going on. They just know that people are eating people, and that people are literally coming back to life and devouring people. When another group of survivors in a U-Haul van comes barreling in the next day, they end up locking up the security guards so that they can rescue the people that are in the security cam, and they end up finding this oversized woman that is who was bitten and dies on them, and then automatically comes to life and then starts to attack them. And this confirms what the nurses have been suspecting, that it's actually the bites that are causing the infection, and so they end up just and one of the other survivors who has been bitten. They debate whether or not they do want to kill him, but then they decide, just to keep an eye on him, and if he should, die and come back to life, to just destroy him then. Um, and from there, it kind of gets more lighthearted, where they are in the mall, they're trying out clothes, they're going with it, whatever food they have until the power goes out, and they end up having to go and restart to start up the generator that's in there. Only to discover that where the generator is at is infected with zombies, and one of the zombies actually comes from piping from the roof. As the zombie has no legs, but has learned to move around with just the and that's one of the things I kind of like about the zombies. Not only do they run, but they do have a level of intelligence that is um, very much make. I compare them to Velociraptors, and they end up destroying those zombies, but they end up having to start to. They end up having. They end up restarting the generator and um, bringing power back to the mall, but they're beginning to realize that they can't stay there for long. At some point, all of their food and stuff is going to run out, and they need to go somewhere else. So they start to hatch a plan that involves converting the mall shuttles into armored transports. But that plan is threatened when a gun shop owner whose shop is across from the mall um, and has been their only other communication with the rest of the world needs to be rescued, and they only to discover that he's become one of the infected as well. So um, they end up taking some of the guns that they had, along with munitions hastily brought together, but that comes to naught because this comes to naught because of they end up the zombies follow them, and they end up and the person they had guarding the door ended up running away, and allowing the zombies to run back into the mall, and allowing themselves uh, they barely escaping um, with their lives, and they end up taking a boat. Remember that part about the river, about that the first patient was at a mall was at a bar near the river? Well, it turns out that the river is where they came from, and the island that they thought was safety was actually ground zero for the whole damn thing. Got a bleak ending, but whatever. It was still an awesome movie. I think so. There's some people who hate that movie. And now we end up going back to full circle to I Am Legend. And I Am Legend is a movie that stars Will Smith and is directed by this is Francis Lawrence, and basically he plays a virologist. Uh, he plays Robert Neville. Uh, and he's immune to a man-made virus that was meant to be a cure for cancer. And he works to create a remedy to defend himself against the mutants that were created by the virus. And once again, we go with the name. Now they're mutants again, and so now we see, the transition from vampire to zombie to mutant to infected to zombie to mutant once again. And basically, um, this it's a genetically engineered variant of the measles disease meant to cure cancer, but it mutates into a lethal strain and was created by Dr. Alice, who is played by Emma Thompson. Uh, Throughout, and it spreads worldwide, killing 90% of humanity. The remaining 5 million become predatory and vampiric, called Darkseekers, and they emerge at dusk to prey on those who are immune to the virus, and so basically um, he survives with the dog, a German Shepherd named Samantha, and Sam for short. And so basically uh, he's experimenting on rats, on affected rats, to find a cure for. And he makes trips into Italy to collect uh, food and medical supplies. I've actually seen this movie. So, and he does in a car. He even has to physically pump out to keep the car running, and he maintains. And so basically, every day he sends out a signal, uh, hoping that there are other survivors out there. Uh, so basically, so at night he stays in his house and hopes the Darkseekers do not overrun him. Um, and so basically, uh, one day when he's deer hunting, he ends up entering an abandoned building. He finds the deer dead and discovers the dog hiding when he realizes that infected. Uh, so he decides to test the treatment by entrapping an infected female, and uh, and basically a male pops out, but um, he screams in agony as he is exposed to sunlight. And so he takes the woman and he tries his new serum, seemingly without success. The next day, so basically the next day he gets, um, he finds, um, so basically the next day he's been actually putting mannequins into different stores and stuff so that he could have someone to talk to since there are no people, and so he finds that one of his mannequins has been moved into the street, and there's a trap set for him. Uh, he ends up uh, as he and have to run infected dogs. Uh, he tries he tries to serum on Sam after he gets bit, but he starts to mutate and he strangles the dog to death. Um, so basically, in his grief, he attacks a group of he attacks a group of death seekers by equipping his fort expedition with UV lights and tries to kill them, but is so overwhelmed. But he is rescued by a pair of, humans, Anna and a boy named Ethan, who has been following his broadcast from Maryland. And so basically, he explains that they are survivors, that they're from, that they're making their way to a survivor camp in Bethlehem, Vermont. He Robert doesn't believe that these camps exist, and so um, exists. So basically, he begins to bond with Anna and Ethan as he is either he's the first humans that he's run unaffected humans that he's run into, um, but he finally he but the but their time together is cut short when uh, the, the alpha male leads an attack onto the house, and so basically they end up going into the they retreat into end up retreating into the laboratory and cleaning off the classroom wall with the infected, discovering that his treatment is working. As the subject looks more human, the seekers break in with himself against the glass into it. For your hand, for Robert draws basically he draws blood from the affected woman, gives it to Anna, uh, and basically shutting him in closed chute, then detonating a grenade, blowing himself and the infected Ethan, right? And Ethan end up later arriving at a survivor colony, handing over the antidote. And it states later that the survivors are Robert's legacy, his fight for a cure to become legend. And basically his um, and there's an alternate ending to this as well. In the alternate ending, uh, Neville doesn't blow himself up. He ends up realizing that that the only reason that they're attacking is that they want is that he wants the female back, and so he ends up handing the female back to them, and they end up leaving, and Neville ends up uh, following Anna and Ethan to the survivor camp in Vermont with the antidote. Uh, According to the special effects supervisor, point of at that point Neville and the audience the nature of the creatures to be incorrect, that it seemed to retain some humanity, an important moment between the alpha and male. The and so basically we've seen it come back full uh, from vampire to um, to zombie to mutant to infected to zombie back to mutants or vampires if you want. But the idea that the tie between vampires and zombies is there, and so considering that how much and monsters change over time and how um, you know that they reflect our society and our way of life, and when the original story is really about having to deal with a change in society that seems to leave you behind. Um, the to to a to a society um, to uh, when the mores of the society no longer hold any value in it, and everyone's out for themselves, to the idea of change and belonging, the idea that the world will change, um, but that there might be room for both, uh, or that the changes that happen. So, and you know, considering that the original definition of zombie is either a person controlled by hypnosis or a person brought back to life um, through magic to be uh, made into a pseudo slave, kind of like a golem or a Frankenstein monster. So it's all of these kind of ideas. The reason why the zombies eat flesh is to get at blood, so they can survive. So the ties between zombies and vampires are there. Um, so that doesn't mean we can't have fun with it. I mean, let's take a look at. I mean, like I have the new Dawn of the Dead, and it's really fun. And this is a fun film, Shaun of the Dead, which is more of a traditional. They're more traditional zombies, but they're really, really kind of. It's a really funny movie. You should watch it. It's directed by Edgar Wright, who does really funny movies. And when you have this, which is basically taking the zombie concept of if they were all teenagers and horny. So it's basically blood, blues, and uh, and personally, I think that the story is uh, both silly and yet it's silly over the top, and yet there is this kind of humanity that's beneath the thing. Uh, it's never really that deep, but it's a lot deeper than what most people think it is. And I think that the people who are constantly complaining um, about the fact that there's so much TNA, lighten up. You know, and every night, look at every George Romero film. There's always uh, one naked lady among the zombies, and Italian zombie movies are full of naked women. So nudity and sex appeal, nudity is part of horror. A lot of horror have from the beginning, having the helpless female female, but now the female characters more than just eye candy. They're actually part of the story, and in this case, they're both eye candy, but they're also kick-ass eye candy. So, they're not deep characters, but they're deeper than what people give them credit. So, I say have fun. It's not all. There are deep messages within the zombie phrase, but there's also, you know, can't you have your, you know, food for thought along with, really fun and at times dumb concepts? So, happy Halloween, and hopefully all of you have a good time partying, trick or treating, uh, and 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 don't get too much of a sugar high. Um, as for myself, I don't really have plans for tomorrow, so I don't know. Maybe I'll just watch these guys. And another movie I would like to recommend besides that, and I used to have it, I'm not too sure if I still do, it's with Daylight. No, it's not Daylight. Well, basically, um, gonna have it. I don't know. Well, basically, the other movie I wanted to recommend, and I can't think of the title right now. The basic premise is that it takes the concept of I Am Legend and takes it a little different step. It takes it from the point of view of the vampire society, and that's as that society begins is trying to maintain groups of humans so they can remain human looking, but as more and more they in the more and more the less blood there is in the supply, the more virulent uh, and downright dangerous they are. And one doctor is trying to yeah, yeah, and I do have the movie Daybreakers. Some people find great. Wait a second. If I do this carefully, I would have all my okay. And then you have Daybreakers and the basic concept of it's Ian Hunt and I don't know who the director is. The Stone Brothers. Ethan Hawke stars as a doctor among the vampires that live in the city, and they keep humans as their food supply, but slowly they're running out of blood, and when they do run out of blood, they start mutating into more bat-like creatures, and they become more virile and violent, and so they real so basically Ethan Hunt's character Edwin I don't know if this is researching a way to deal with he's trying to find a substitute uh, to because trying to find a substitute for blood because uh, if the human population dies, then they die as well, and he inadvertently discovers the cure through a uh, through a person who by accident discovers the cure, and the cure is basically he takes two of the things that vampires are traditionally viewed to fear, which is sunlight and water, and uh, that exposure to sunlight and water combined purges the vampire out of them, and thus their own blood becomes uh, part of the cure. And so Ethan uh, takes does the procedure and cures himself of it. But then he discovers that not everyone is wanting to get rid of wants the cure, um, because they are, because they view themselves as immortal, and why would they want to give back on that? They're more interested in protecting themselves than they are in viewing the quote greater picture of the society at large. And And so now we're in Death's full circle. We're now back to vampires again. And so, uh, kind of that link between vampires and vampires and zombies are there, and hopefully you will all have a wonderful Halloween. Sorry for all the rambling. I tend to do that. So, goodbye.